Hello everyone, Tyra Dawn Chaser here with a new series called Tea Talk with Tyra, in which I really just speak to issues or news surrounding the MMO genre. Now this will be a sort of continuation of my last tea, so you might want to check that one out first. But okay Tyra, enough with the platitudes and the introductions and all that. What is the tea for today? Now, like I said in my last talk, WoW and Final Fantasy are two just vastly different experiences. And I did say that the healing experience in Final Fantasy was better than WoW, but that's not to say that Final Fantasy doesn't have its own issues. One advantage that WoW has over Final Fantasy is that its healers and their designs haven't been artificially limited like Yoshi P and the other devs have done to healers in 14. There's a sort of forced and artificial dichotomy. You're either healing over time or absorbs, and this mentality limits the design of healers in the future. Not only will new healing classes have to compete with Astrologian in terms of utility for a raid spot, they'll also have to fight against White Mage's prioritization for progression rating, as well as Scholar's spot for high DPS and free healing after optimization. In the meta right now, Astro always, hands down, gets a spot due to cards. So that means future healers will have to battle for viability against both White Mage and Scholar. You know, obviously this severely limits design space. The new healer will either be way too good and placed beside Astrologian by default, or just not strong enough to be considered over White Mage and Scholar. It's just a really bad, unbalanced healing meta, and Astrologian is honestly the problem. We don't want it to be early Heavensward when Astro wasn't viable, but we also don't want Astro Scholar to be the only viable healing composition post-optimization. I'm honestly scared that we're not going to see a new healer like Chemist, Arithmetician, or Dancer because of this. The healer meta is so unbalanced and skewed, and nobody, literally nobody on this planet wants to see two more DPS classes in 5.0, except those players that only main DPS, but those people don't know what they're talking about half the time anyway. I would love to see a new tank and healer in 5.0, but Square would have to come up with something imaginative as well as balanced for the new expansion. Again, please don't give us two more generic DPS classes. Nobody wants to see that. There is also another more existential issue with the way that Final Fantasy plays. Now, this is my personal opinion, but in my last Tea Talk, I mentioned that one of WoW's advantages over FF14 was the emphasis on healing. In WoW, you're just way more focused on filling health bars, whereas DPS is a secondary thing. I really like the way that this priority system works. I think this issue comes from just the way that FF14 was designed. I think it's an intrinsic flaw in the way the game works, but I really don't know exactly where the problem is located. I just know I don't want to be spamming Broil 90% of the fight. It could be the way that fights are designed, or it could be the way that numbers are calculated, or the way that things are coded. I really honestly don't know. I'm not a coder. Healers in post-optimization stages typically just attack and use OGCD healing spells when the boss occasionally AoEs once every 3 months. I honestly think this should be inverted. Indomitability and energy drain aren't the only tools in a Scholar's kit, but sometimes it feels that way. The one time I didn't feel like this was during 08 Savage progression against God Kefka. I will never forget it. It was just due to the sheer amount of massive damage that came out every couple seconds. The healing checks were really tight, the DPS checks were really tight, the mechanics required an unprecedented amount of precision. I really definitely enjoyed the high stress environment, and the burden of just sitting there pressing Broil wasn't as big of a responsibility. And you know, that's not to say that DPS shouldn't be a part of a healer's priorities, but I will always find healing infinitely more engaging than DPS. Theoretically, you can find a set rotation for DPS that outputs the max damage mathematically possible. You press 1 exactly at this moment, then you press 2 exactly at this moment. But you can't really do that with healing. Healing requires you to analyze the situation, triage your party members, and know your toolkit like the back of your hand. And that's why the overemphasis on DPS in this community really irritates me, because these elites at the top of the FF log charts calculate when exactly you should be casting X and Y, and they create the most mathematically effective DPS map for healers to follow and never deviate from. I feel that this sucks the fun out of healing in Final Fantasy, and it's one of the reasons I periodically lose interest in the game. Your worth and skill as a healer is almost entirely determined by how big your broil numbers are, when healers contribute a lot more to the party than green or red numbers. It really removes the fun from looking at a situation and deciding what the most efficient option is. It removes the fun from determining who receives this spell or that spell. It removes the fun from playing a healer when the top FF loggers decide that you must do broil into Miasma 2 at exactly this point in time. If I wanted my entire rotation to be mapped out for me and never deviate from it, I would play Black Mage. And it doesn't just affect the fun factor. The emphasis on DPS from the top trickles down into the community. Like I said before, your worth as a healer is determined by how much DPS you can push out, instead of your communication skills or your ability to identify and prevent incoming damage, your level-headedness in high-stress situations, your synergy with other raid members, or your flexibility in a fight gone wrong. In my book, if it's really possible to number someone based on skill level, there's probably an issue. Healers, and other roles for that matter, are a lot more complex than a number or DPS percentile can represent. The state of the healing community in FF14 is honestly really sad. As far as I know, there isn't this level of DPS obsession in WoW, because the community over there understands that a healer does a lot more than press a healing spell or press an attack spell. When you want to join a raiding guild, they don't just look at your logs and make a quick generalization. They give you a trial period to measure these complex factors that make or break good healers. The Final Fantasy healing community's stance on DPS logs just seems so toxic to me, and I will probably never understand the emphasis on DPS as a native WoW player. I love Final Fantasy and all, but sometimes I just need a break from this craziness. Okay everyone, that concludes this Tea Talk with Tyra. I hope it offered a unique perspective. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more content from me. Keep spamming insert generic filler spell here, and I'll catch you all later. ご清聴ありがとうございました。